Hi, welcome. This is Dr. John DeMartini. This is one of the most amazing and inspiring shows that you can listen into. If you want to be on the edge of your seats, if you want to open up your heart, if you want to expand your mind, and you want to meet incredible people, stay tuned because you're just about to experience a transformative radio show that will change your life. And you're listening to the Dr. Pat Show that's coming up right next.
Welcome to the Dr. Pat Show. Talk radio to thrive by. Powerful, inspiring, and coming to you live, bringing you stories of people like you and me, busting through and living life full out. Get ready to dare to wonder what your life would be like if you knew you could not fail.
I want to welcome everyone here, and I want to welcome you to a very, very seriously important show. One of the things I want to say out of the gate, it has been I want to call it a conundrum. I want to say that for me, looking at this world, and every time I say the word autism, and many of you know, when I started this show, I made a discovery and I did series upon series to educate the public. But we have not made much improvement on really getting underneath it until my very special guest today, who wrote the book, The Hidden Traumatic Brain Injury at Birth Causing Autism Epidemic. This is a book designed to end the autism epidemic. It's finally here. Why? Because, listen, Danny. Did I get that pronunciation right?
Yes.
All right.
Danny.
Dinesh has, for the most part, at least for me, helped me understand more and all of the people that I know. But what is the problem? Why haven't we been able to get the truth and information out about this? But I'm not going to answer that. Dinesh, thank you for joining me here today. Look, your background, let's just take a minute to talk about that for a minute. The many, many things you've done, whether science, technology, I love the idea, molecular modeling. I love that. Probably we have to talk about that in another show. But I love everything you've done. And you've written several books, Autism, Answers in Action, right? Autism, Causes Unveiled. This has been the gap. We talk about it, but we haven't been able to get the root at the why. I want to know your why. What was your why to say, I have got to take a different perspective look at this?
Obviously, when I'm a parent of two boys on the autism spectrum, so when you are a parent, it kind of takes over your life, autism at that point. I was mostly looking at, possible treatments. And if you don't understand the cause, you're not going to get anywhere with the treatment itself. And for the most part, we are being told autism is a genetic disorder. That's the easiest to blame is what it is. We never had anything genetic on either side of the family, myself and my wife. And we were like, wow, what's going on in there? So we seriously did believe it at some point. And then what happened was, like, when we were going through this various treatments for the boys, one doctor, a neurologist that we consulted, ordered an MRI scan, and people typically on the autism spectrum, we don't go looking at MRI scans a whole lot. And, this doctor had ordered one, and I got to take a look at the report. Wow. Happened quite by accident, call it karmic, call it whatever. I went and picked up that report from the hospital because the doctor's office didn't get it, before the appointment. So I took a look at it, and in there, I wasn't expecting any findings at all, whatsoever. It's typically normal. But then I looked at it and I saw white matter scarring. White matter gliosis. I had to look up that term gliosis there. And it showed white matter gliosis in multiple parts of my second son's brain. And that got me thinking. I was like, wow, what went on? Why would he have this kind of it was clearly traumatic brain injury.
Yeah.
The brain injury doesn't happen in the white matter. White matter is like the neuron fibers.
Yeah.
There's a neuron cell and a long tail attached to that cell, and those are the neuron fibers. And white matter is composed mainly of those neuron fibers, and there's damage in there. How it's deep within the brain. There's no way this can happen at any other time outside of the birth process itself.
Yeah.
So that's what got me thinking. That's what set me on this path of discovery, trying to figure out what's causing the autism epidemic. And I started talking to other parents. Obviously, not many people had taken an MRI scan. There were a few that had taken a scan and not had any findings. So, and I took a scan again for my second boy, and actually my first boy. The second boy had the findings, and the first boy, I took an MRI scan. His was perfectly normal.
Wow.
He was born exactly the same way that his brother was, but then there were differences, and all that turned up upon
Yeah.
researching what exactly happened there.
I so love that you did that, and I so love that you looked at that. I actually went to find my my scan information because a year they did every test in the book on me, but I didn't understand any of it. I didn't understand what the marks were that they showed me. Honestly, at that point in time, it was not important to me. I wasn't
Right.
dead. But let's talk about this. There is a flawed theory.
Mhm.
There are many.
Many
We
flaws.
hear them. There are many.
Right.
And it becomes almost, my language, not yours, a smokescreen
Very
for
true.
getting underneath it. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I
Exactly.
want to know, based on what you did and what you looked at and how you went about it, you shocked at what you found?
Absolutely, absolutely. I was totally shocked. And um, what really happened was my two boys were uh, subject to prolonged labor induction at birth. Now,
Yes.
labor induction is a process that started back in 1980. It's like that's when a drug called Pitocin was introduced for elective induction of labor. And that's what gave obstetricians full control of a woman's uterus during birth. It's like it was this amazing tool that could allow the obstetrician to fully control the birth process. There was nothing like it before that. And it was this modern miracle when it was introduced. But then what I found out is it also introduced a possibility of traumatic brain injury at birth if it's done wrong. If you're subject to labor induction for a really long time, it causes traumatic brain injury. And what really happens, let me explain exactly
But
what
can I comment before you go any further? I love
Sure,
this.
sure.
And
Yeah,
yet, for the average person who's going to listen to this, they're going to be like, oh my God, that makes so much common sense. They're going to not even have to put the science together to say, Dinesh is right. That just makes total sense, right?
exactly.
That's why
Exactly.
you
It's
can
common sense,
hide something like this so well because it does make total sense.
Very
Go
true.
ahead, continue. I'm sorry. I just had to make that comment.
Yeah. Sure. So what happens is like uh, during birth, the baby is coming down head first down the birth canal. And once you lose that amniotic fluid, the cushion around the baby is gone, and all you have is like this head that they use to open up the mom's cervix to get that 0 to 10 centimeter dilation. The first stage of the birth is the dilation, from 0 to 10 centimeters. And to get that dilation, if the cervix is not ready and you start this labor induction, what really happens is you're hammering that head against a cervix that will not dilate.
Over and over and over again.
Over and over again. And there is a limit of how long you can hammer. And that's laid out even on the labeling of the drug. The drug label clearly says, pitocin label clearly says, you cannot continue indefinitely. There's limits on how long you can subject that head to the contraction trauma, the contraction forces. And certain moms, by nature, they can carry that pregnancy. They're perfectly healthy. They can carry that pregnancy for like 45, 46 weeks. But then obstetricians tend to intervene and say, hey, you're at 40 weeks and we're not seeing anything. There's bound to be complications. They apply this template of, later in pregnancy, women getting complications, but it doesn't happen to everybody. The healthiest women, and they end up targeting the healthiest moms for this labor induction process. It's a process that's only applied to healthy moms, with no other complications. And what happens is, like, when they don't dilate within that 10 centimeter, within that 4 to 6 hours is the limit, depending on how many contractions are coming on every 10 minutes. It's either 2 or 3 contractions that they set up that labor induction process at. So if it doesn't dilate within that 4 to 6 hours, then you start sustaining traumatic brain injury. And what it is, it really destroys the neuron network, the fundamental neurons that are carrying signals across the brain. And so what that results in, as the baby grows up, you don't see it because the brain does not perceive pain upon damage to itself. It's an incredible organ. It really senses pain everywhere else in the body, except when there is damage to itself, it doesn't perceive pain.
It's an incredible deniability, or it does deniability better than anything in the universe we know about. But what you're talking about, you did research, and your research, right? I can only imagine what happens when you write a book like this, how you become under the eyes of everybody. But I do want to talk more than about that. I want to talk about the research and what your outcomes were that you found, because that's so important for people to understand.
Very true. So I, started looking at everything, around the labor induction process originally. And before that, I wanted to mention this one thing. Is like, there is no perceptible, fetal distress or anything that goes on, during that labor induction, because the brain does not perceive pain upon damage to itself. So, and then the damage happens, but then the second stage of labor is the pushing stage, right? So the pushing stage tends to mold that head. It's like it's been hammered in place with the cervical dilation step, but then later there's pushing and the head deforms to take a conical shape, And when that deformation happens, all that scarring in the brain kind of gets redistributed, disappears from MRI scans. So what I did was, like, the first thing I did as part of my research was, take an MRI scan for my first boy. The second boy showed all this damage.
Right.
And I took this MRI scan for my first boy, and there was nothing.
Yeah.
His was perfectly normal. They couldn't find anything in his MRI scan. And then I thought through the whole thing, why was this the case? And that's because my second boy was induced for a longer period of time than my first boy. That's one thing. But then he was a smaller baby. And he was hammered really hard for a really long time. And he did not have to be pushed out. He just, it just they call it cervical dilation, but it was really a stretch and tear of the cervix. And he came right out without pushing because he was like a pound smaller than
Yeah.
his older brother. So he was a smaller baby and he didn't go through any pushing. So his scars remained intact. So what I figured was like, oh boy, this birth process by itself is hiding this traumatic brain injury that's
Yeah.
happening at birth. So that was a revelation right there. It's like, oh
Yeah.
wow. So uh, unless people look at the pitocin labeling, which we saw what happened with the health secretary and their announcement about Tylenol. The truth of the matter is, Tylenol is got a label that says it's safe for pregnancy. Pitocin, on the other hand, is a drug that carries a brain damage warning on its label. That's what my research turned up. Is like, okay, well, let's look at this drug, and it's got a brain damage warning, and it's a traumatic brain injury warning. That too, it's a traumatic brain injury warning, and it clearly happens because of, it says it can happen because of uterine motility. That it's like, it's a drug. Usually drugs, the way they work based on the chemical effect of the drug on your body. Now this drug creates contractions. It's a physical force that it's
Yeah.
creating,
Yeah.
and that force is what is causing the damage.
Yeah.
So it's a physical trauma. So it's very different from all the other drugs, and the way it works. But then the people that in power. So obviously, this label in a drug with a warning label like this is got completely overlooked, and
Totally
that
overlooked. But here's
overlooked.
another thing that I want to just mention to you. And I know that all this is in your book. When I did the series on autism, I watched the pattern of cases increase. You could see the pattern increase, right? From like 1 in 25, right?
Exactly.
One in like 3,000 to 1 in 25. And you have to ask yourself that question. Such a common increase. I mean, that defies any statistical model you want to build about something happening by chance. But what you did is you went back to something that makes so much sense.
Yep.
And
Exactly.
yet, what are we going to do to stop it? I just want to ask that question because I don't see anything where I'm sitting.
Right. I had great hopes for the health secretary to come out. I know that his research team really found my work. I'm the one voice on the internet that,
Yeah.
I have this book out in from 2021, and then I have this book out now in
Yeah.
2024, Autism Causes Unveiled. And it is, I'm the only voice, and I know they found it because the secretary himself was mentioning that in the cabinet meetings. He said,
Hmm.
there are birth interventions that we have found that are definitely causing the problem.
Yeah.
But then I don't know what happened. This is all birth injury. This is
Oh, I could
considered
tell you what
birth
happened,
injury.
but we'll have to save that for another show because I
Mhm.
don't want anybody hunting me down right now. But I can tell you what
Right.
happened. There's a show on television now. It's called Matlock,
Mhm.
and it's a fascinating show. It was so popular, got renewed before it was even over. And the tagline throughout that show is "Follow the money."
True.
That's the
It-
Matlock tagline. But what
Exactly.
you're
Because
doing is you're saying, "Look, I don't know what it's going to take for other people to get on board with you." I
Mhm.
really don't. I don't understand the lag sometimes, and especially in my own healing journey, the lag I had between what was known and what the medical profession was willing to get behind. And I became an advocate for it, and we moved the needle.
Mhm.
But man, that was hard work. I should have written a book like you. But I want to ask you this question in the minutes we have left. The book details so beautifully the journey, the backdrop, your research, the findings, but I want to hear from you the future. And before we do that,
Mhm.
people should know how to get a copy of this book. What is the best place for folks to go?
Yes, the book is available on Amazon. That's currently the only place it's available at. I'm working on getting it into bookstores. But Amazon Autism Causes Unveiled, Dinesh Dani. You look for that, it's right there. Um, and I've gotten great reviews on the book
Yeah,
from doctors. Dr. Grady Harp gave a amazing review. He
they're
was
great.
Yeah, he's like author of like 50 different medical books and other books. So it's accepted by everybody except the obstetric
Yeah.
community, and for obviously their own reasons. They do not want birth injury litigation. An
Yeah.
Armageddon of litigation is what probably is um, you know
So many
behind
factors,
behind the
lawsuits coming in for them
right.
not reading the label. I mean, we could do a whole show just on that. But you see, part of what you've done in this book, and I really want to honor you for this, you have put diagrams in here. You show stages of brain development. You're not just walking through, but I know I worked for an engineering company for 25 years. I got to hang out with Arno Penzia, so a little of that engineering rubbed off on me, and you could see that you took your profession and your background and presented this in a way that most people have not seen before. And the other thing I want to thank you for is not compromising on putting images in here. A lot of times book like this don't have images. The other thing is thank you for the free Kindle, because if you have a membership, I already have my Kindle version of the book. Thank
Exactly.
you for making that available. There's so much more we could talk about. I know this is a short show, and so I wanted to ask you one other question. What's your personal message? Because I know you're not done. And honestly, I wish you would come to our network and do a whole show, series on this, because
Absolutely.
otherwise you are not going to be able to get anything out of the gate. But what's your vision? What's your personal message? What would you like to leave everybody with today?
Sure. So I have this nonprofit called the Autism Parents Initiative, autismpi.org, where I am running a retrospective research data collection initiative. So among autism parents, if you're a parent looking at this show today, please do go there, autismpi.org, and put down your information. There's no commitment. It's totally free. It's just data collection of exactly what happened during the birth process that might have caused your child's autism, and we're collecting that information.
Yeah,
One thing is for possible legal discovery, just because we know that unless there is victory in courts, these
yeah,
standards of care and other things do not change.
mm,
And for moms, pregnant moms looking at watching the show today, what I'd like to leave them with is the fact that there is a potential birth intervention lurking out there. You are told that it is safe and natural way of delivering, but it's safe and natural for the first few contract 4 to 6 hours. After that, it causes traumatic brain injury, and so you got to be watchful of that. You can use that as a last resort, but then remember that if you're subject to labor induction and 4 to 6 hours into it, you are boxed into if there is no delivery, then you're boxed into a C-section. You know, you have to have that C-section to get the baby out, because outside of that, you're gonna cause traumatic brain injury, which is gonna later be called autism, and they will tell you they don't know why it happened. So
exactly. That's exactly it. And by the way, I have several friends that have daughters and sons that are going to get this, your site, going to get the book, because I'll tell you my last word to everybody out there. This is my last word, and you really, all of you out there, thank Dinesh. And I'll tell you why, because so many of you have talked to me, especially during our autism series, and you feel as moms, especially guilt and shame, like your sense of if I would have only ... And I've heard so many of your stories. If I would have only gone to bed earlier, all of this guilt and shame, if I would have not done the vaccine, if I would have, and I'm telling you, this book isn't about that. And it will give you some freedom of conscience. Read the book, make your own decisions, but look at the science in here. And from where I sit, look at the common sense. Dinesh, thank you so much for everything today.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Pat. This was an amazing conversation we had today.
Yeah, and don't take that lightly what I said about the moms. I have a PhD in psychology, and I will tell you what moms feel. Guilt and shame beyond anything you can imagine. And thank you for this book. And don't give up on the health people in DC, okay?
Oh yeah. We're firing on all cylinders, trying to get their attention. Yes.
Thank you, Dinesh. Take care. For all of you out there, pass this on. We'll see you next time.